You're listening to the Finding Truth podcast. When we're not getting distracted by Jacob's plain facts, we discuss taking ownership of our faith and what it looks like to follow Jesus in today's culture. Here are your hosts, Lockie and Brad.
Welcome back to the Finding Truth podcast. I'm pretty keen to be here again. I'm glad you guys could join us for another week.
It's good.
Lockie, what are we doing today?
Today we are continuing on our Left on Red series, and so we're going to continue looking at messages or clear instructions that God gives us that we just sort of leave on red because we do. And so today, last week we looked at idolatry and the things we put before God, and today we're going to look at another topic. And so I'm pretty excited to get into it. So Ralph, you were saying you sort of had something in mind.
Yeah, I reckon the most left unread message from God that humanity leaves unread is forgiveness. We just, like the amount of bitterness, I often think, you meet good people. You're like, man, you're just a good people. And what's the difference between you and somebody who believes in Jesus? You know, there's some really good people out there. And I think it boils down to the forgiveness that people hold grudges, they stay bitter, they cling on to stuff, and it eats and gnaws away at their soul. And there's a real good reason why Jesus says, forgive. And says it in a variety of ways, but surely the most powerful words that have ever been said is Jesus' last words on the cross. When they hang him on the cross, they've humiliated him. He's naked. He's been beaten. He's been accused of stuff that he didn't do, and he's about to breathe his last. And he says those words, "Forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing." It's just this stunning moment. Like the world kind of goes, hang on, that's not how it's done. Like, are you kidding? Of all the people that should have held a grudge and had the right to, and all the people that should have had the grudge held against them, it was the perfect scenario. And God just lets it go. He's like, no, forgive them. Even though there's no apology, there's no understanding, they don't know what they're doing, they don't even care. Just forgive them. And it's just insane, the power that unlocks for us in following Jesus and the freedom it unlocks for us.
Good. I think this is another one of those things where God tells us to do something and we go, why? Like that's hard. That sucks.
It's the hardest, right?
Are you kidding me?
Hurt you?
Like why God do you have to be so controlling that now I have to forgive somebody else? But it comes back to the same thing we've covered previously on this podcast as well, is that God's actually giving us messages and instructions that create a way or a pathway for us to experience the best life possible. So it's not actually something to run away from, but it's something that's going to bring a lot to us from God in living that way that He has created for us. So I guess question for you then, Rolf, is as we practice forgiveness, what do you think God does in us first?
It's such a good question. I think that harnesses everything. Like we cannot forgive out of our own power. We are just powerless to actually do that, to let go of the grievances done against us. And we're talking some people listen to this would have horrendous things that have been done to them. And we can't just let that go. But here's the thing. If I were to work out how many things I've ever done wrong that have upset God, hurt God, disdained His holiness, caused a blemish on that, every thought, every action, everything, and I were to somehow write it down, it would be volumes and volumes and volumes and volumes. And God looks at me and says, it's done. Wiped it clean. You're free.
Yeah.
And I take that and I compare it to whatever hurt somebody's done against me. I'm like, I've done way more against God than God's ever done against me. And God can let that go, and then He gives me that grace. So He pours this grace into me that means that stuff doesn't count anymore, and I have that grace then to offer others. So I'm actually not offering, when somebody offends me, they're actually offending God, and so I'm literally passing on God's forgiveness to them. So it actually has very little to do with me. We get drawn into it, you get hurt by it, but actually we're vessels of God's grace, that God has forgiven me so much that I'm now going to forgive you. And as I do that, I'm free, and that person is transformed.
It's good. It's good. I think as well as that we probably live in a culture now where it's easier not to forgive because when we communicate with people, we're not always just bumping into them face to face. And it's a lot more awkward when you can sense unforgiveness when you're looking people face to face, and it sort of gets dealt with more quickly. But now we have a keyboard warrior generation, and we jump on and we rant and we send messages and we flick off a nasty TikTok or whatever and go like, this is you, or like, this is this other person. And it's so much easier just to take that anger and that frustration and put it into an act of, I guess, a dishonoring act toward that person to make yourself feel better for a moment. But in reality, like you said, that doesn't actually bring the change that God wants to bring to us.
A mate of mine was talking about he's a chaplain in the school, and this girl came to him who was angry as, like filled with rage toward this girl, her friend or whatever, had done something. And it got to the point that the parents were enraged and were writing letters to the parents and the school and the kids and all that. It was just horrendous. And this girl comes in and my mate like says, revenge will not get you anything. Like, you know, they'll hate you back. You hit them, they'll hit you back. And it just, see, that violence just deteriorates everything. It takes away from everyone. But it's a brave thing to forgive. It's like,
I remember someone saying, not forgiving someone is like drinking poison and expecting them
to die.
Like,
gosh.
The only person that you're affecting, or the person who is actually being affected the most by you not forgiving someone is yourself.
And I don't even think you need to tell the other person you forgive them. I don't think that really matters. Like if you're in a relationship with them, absolutely it's helpful, but not because of forgiveness. You know, it's all about you and God.
It is, because otherwise it just festers, right? Otherwise, and that's not That's not good for any. Well, it's not affecting anyone else. It's not festering in their lives.
That's right.
It's eating away at you and your being.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be. Yeah.
So Lockie's still harboring some unforgiveness toward me for leaving him on red this last week.
Yeah.
So what practical ways can you give Lock to forgive?
He needs to see his grievance that he feels toward you in light of the amount he would have grieved God, which must be a lot. So
I can confirm it would be a lot.
Yeah. So then,
fair enough.
Then he needs to say, well, God's let go of that, so I need to let go of that, Brad. But then if he says it to you, you don't really want him to, because then you have to change your behaviour if your behaviour was indeed sinful to Locke.
It's good.
How are you feeling? Like you can let that go?
I think I can.
I mean, you said it last week that you were going to try.
Look, I'm willing to.
Yeah.
But
it'd be nice if he changed his behaviour, though, wouldn't it?
It would be nice. It's hard. It's hard to forgive someone when they keep doing it.
And that's fascinating. It is. Like Jesus talked about that, didn't he? He's like, when I think it was Peter's like, how many times should you forgive? And Jesus is like, like 7 times 70. Haha. I could handle 7, but oh my gosh. And it's this idea of, no, you just keep on forgiving, because God keeps on forgiving us.
Again and again and again.
Yeah. It also means that I think we get tripped up to, forgiving someone doesn't mean being friends with them. It doesn't mean caring for them or being in a relationship with them. There's times when people break our trust so severely that you shouldn't be friends with them. But you should forgive them.
Yeah, it's you can forgive. This is what someone said to me actually, because I was like wrestling with it, and it's you can forgive someone, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to forget.
Exactly. Yep.
And so you need to be able to let go of what they've done, but that doesn't mean you should just blindly or naively walk straight back into the same thing again. So learn from it, remember it. You don't have to forget it.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to give pass that grace on that God's given us. So,
and I think a good indicator that you have forgiven is that you're not stirred with bitterness toward them when you remember that thing.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
How you know.
Yeah,
brilliant.
I think just to finish with one last thought in how you know you have forgiven, I think a really good way is to think about it in terms of if you've chosen to forgive that person, you've also given up your right to seek revenge.
Yes.
So if you've chosen to forgive, I'm going to forgive you. You've given up your right then to get even at them by ranting to your best mate's best mate and their third uncle's cousin and all the other people in between because you're still mad at them, right? So if you give up if you forgive, you've given up the right to get even by ranting or continuing to be bitter or seek revenge in some other way.
So good.
Yeah. No, that's so good. Well, there you go. That's part 2 of our little mini series, Left on Red, Forgiveness and Idolatry. And as promised, it's our weekly duty to finish these episodes with a fact with Jacob. So we're going to head over to the Van Master for a very quick. Last week, I think Jacob's fact was longer than the episode itself.
It was extensive, wasn't it?
Well, it was a great fact. Everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying it wasn't a good fact, but
it was a fantabulous fact.
Keep it quick.
Well, this week's fact, as promised, is on black boxes, which are actually orange boxes. Would you believe it?
I would, because I heard Ralph say that last week.
They're easier to find if they're orange, right? Why are they called black?
Why?
Why are they black boxes?
Because the black box is actually a box inside a box, and the original old school ones, the inside box was painted black.
Is the inside box still painted black?
I'm not sure.
What's
I've
inside
not
the
had
box?
to crack one open before. Electronics. Lots of electronics are inside the box. The black boxes are actually called flight data recorders. So they record all parameters of the flight, from anything from voices in the cockpit to alarms, how the engines are operating. All systems are recorded onto this
Frequency
box.
of the airplane toilet flush, or
Yeah, everything.
Actually,
100%. Did you know that
that
your
was just
butt
being
could
funny.
also be suctioned to a toilet? But that's
that sounds like a fact for another
that
week.
is a fact for another week.
All right, and that is why we give the Van Master a limited slot.
Oh, I didn't finish my fact.
Generous.
That was generous. All right, well, that is another week of the Finding Truth podcast. Have a great one, and we'll see you next week.